Hello. It's awesome. I see some people in chat already. It's awesome. Welcome. Today I'm going to be some world machine tests and stuff. It's one of these things that when you do what I do, you need to kind of work out how to do things better and if it's possible to do something and what the results will look like and stuff. So there will be. Hi, Pete Bog. Hello. Welcome back. I'm snacking a little bit here too, so I occasionally mute the mic for a second or two. Okay, so the I guess it's I need to start explaining the setup here a bit first because this is a bit alien to people, to most people who don't dive deep into it. This is the latest version of World Machine, version 4 of World Machine. So, and what we're looking at here is the 3D programming setup with all the devices and stuff. And what I've done is that I've started to work on a test area that we're going to. So I want to test a couple of things. I want to test how good tiling works, and I also want to see if manually created rivers can work with a tiled setup. And I'm going to explain what all this means in details as we go about doing things in the next 2 hours or so. But I think first is the order of the day is to start explaining a little bit what this is. So I have two different terrain types that I can mix and match. And for everyone to get a sense of how large of an area this is, I've actually imported in a guide map from Greyhawk. So we can actually look at this. So this is the area. I simply took the area around the city of Greyhawk. So oops, center it. So it's about 50 or so miles, 50, 60 miles around across here, and I've just took Greyhawk City because this area is kind of known. So we're not going to match this area. That's not the purpose of this exercise. That will come later. There will be World Machine videos when we can try and match exactly what the existing terrain is and try to make it better in World Machine. Today we're just going to get a river through and see if we can mask it and create some hills and then do the tiled render and see if we can get if the tiling works. And so what I have two different terrain types here, so we can actually go in and hang on a second. I need to go and lock my out view on that so we actually see the output. So each terrain type have these layout controller that I can actually control where terrain appears, so to speak. So I have a little bit more hilly terrain. That is the terrain type 1. That has more kind of sharp hill. It's like the Cairn Hills. And then I have terrain type 2. That's more lowlands and kind of a little bit flat, rounded hills. So, and we might need to tweak it and stuff. So we'll see. So this is just a very, very basic setup. So each of these, you have a layout control that's the device where you tell World Machine exactly where you want each terrain. So here I can tell I have terrain 1 here and I have terrain 1 here. Or these areas are terrain 1, and if I go back here I can double click on terrain 2 and I have terrain 2 in between the others, so to speak. So that's that's what we can control in the form of setup. And then each of these terrains have a purlin. That's the fractal noise that creates the terrain. And then I have a device called the flow restructure, and that creates or kind of shapes the terrain so all the valleys have an opening down towards the ocean. So whatever water flows through the terrain will actually have somewhere to go. And most terrains in the world, not all, but most eroded old terrain that has been around for hundred millions of years, it's structured that way. So every valley has an opening and whatever rivers come through little creeks and then turn into rivers will eventually flow out into the ocean. That's flow restructure. There are terrains in the real world that doesn't have this, like really fresh terrain like lava and when you've had earthquakes and stuff like that. They can kind of take away that flow restructure so you don't have. Hi Glenn, welcome. It's World Machine today, so I'm explaining a little bit of the setup here. So it's World Machine. So we're going to work and create some tiled terrain, and we're going to work on some manually created rivers and see if with the mask and stuff if that actually works in a tiled setup. That's the goal with this. So it's a bit of research and development to figure out if things actually you can work and improve things. So that's the idea to for today's exercise, so to speak. So it's kind of technical and somewhat tedious, but if you want good results, this is what you need to do. And after the flow restructure, that kind of forms the general shape of the terrain. After the or kind of restructure the valleys and stuff from the purlin. So if we look at this, you can say purlin just creates these kind of blobs of noise where the shapes allows it to be, because I masked it out here. And then you have this one, it just cuts off some of the valleys, doesn't do much visible, so to speak. And then we have the big one here, and that's erosion, that is using computer algorithms to actually shape the raw purlin fractals into actually looking like real terrain. And then I've added some coastal erosion as well, that kind of cleans up and create beaches and creates that kind of that simulates the ocean and pounding of water and the sediment deposits and stuff like that. And then I use a chooser that I connected to the layout controller here, and I start out with a constant of 0 meters, and then I mix in the first terrain, and then I send that information down, and I have a second setup here of a new type of terrain, so to speak. So we have two types. So and then the first and the second is combined here, and I have this setup here that takes the data in. I'm going to have more in-depth look at World Machine and all the basic setup. This is a very basic setup, but we're going to work in more advanced stuff and so on. And I suggest you go, if anyone who's interested in World Machine, I suggest you go and watch my kind of basic introduction to World Machine. I've done what is like 4 or 5 videos. It's on an older version of World Machine, but apart from the UI being bright instead of dark, everything that I do will work in the old version so far, except tiling that will come later on, so to speak. But it's so all the idea of the basic functioning, you can kind of study that in the old version too. Okay, so then we have the last bit here is just to colorize the terrain. So instead of just having this basic thing you see here, and here you can see what the terrain one looks like. And then if I go down here, I can actually select this device, and we can look at this is what the terrain looks like if we just see the height field. So we have a little bit of terrain in the middle. We have to reshape this so it actually we get a workable terrain, so to speak. And then if I go here, I can see the colorized version. So I have a colorizer that colors the landmass, and then I have another colorizer here that colorizes the water. And here I have the selection. So this selector just selects everything that is below 2 or above 2 kilometers. You have to realize that World Machine doesn't work in imperial, it works in metric units. And then I rescale this. So this is a little bit of a technical and then I mix the two together, and in here we can actually see the results. So now we have the ocean being blue, so the darker blue the deeper it is, and then the landmass starts out with a little bit of a beach, and then it's dark green, and it gets brighter green, and then the mountains turn into more mountainous colors the higher they get. And the maximum height of the terrain here is 30 kilometers plus 2 kilometers of ocean. But since I'm working 3 times the scale of World Machine intends you to work. So it's effectively 10 kilometers high mountains. So we have as much room as there is on planet Earth, so to speak. So we can create cool terrain and mountains up to 10 kilometers high if we want to. And here you can see we have this blob here is one type of terrain with a bit more rounded old hills and more sandy beaches and stuff. And this on the either side here is terrain type 1 that has way more steep cliff, younger mountains, and you get these kind of coves and this kind of rugged coastline that is way more different than these forms beaches and rounded hills and stuff. So that's just to get a little bit of variation and to make sure that whatever the type of setup we create here can actually handle more than one terrain. So I don't need a lot of different terrains for this test, so to speak. So here we have the two terrain types. What now? The next thing here is to introduce a river. Well, first before that, we need to create some sort of cool setup that we can run the river in. And again, I think Glenn, you came after I showed that last time. So let me show again. This here is the area here is about 60 by 60 miles. And to get a sense how that big it is in Greyhawk, I've taken a guide map here so we can actually look at that. And it's the equivalent of this area here. So we have the city of Greyhawk and we have about 60 miles and we have the Salinton River flowing through here. So I'm not going to try and match this in detail in this exercise. We're just going to do a rough very rough representation, and then just to test if we can get a river through, and then we can do a tile render and see if we can get the masks done here. So okay, so let's go in and make sure we get the, hang on a second, we need to not look at that, we need to look at this instead. There we go. And then we go in here and we can create over here, we can create some high mountains there and not have that much fall off distance, and actually create another polygon here. There we go. Something like that, and then we have that one there. And now I'm going to do a path here so I get some tall mountains going up here. And that one needs to have a lot of fall off distance here. There we go. Do a little quick look here. There is something that it's not exactly how I envisioned the Cairn Hills, but it will do for now. We have a sharp here. I'm going to fix this kind of this really rough edge here, but we have some hills and mountains, and we're going to fix these on the sides here with introducing the other terrain. Now I just need to put these taller mountains here. There we go. Okay, let's do the other one here. Now we need to have some more kind of low terrain in between here. Just create some. There we go, and just create some here. And now you see, you're starting to see all the limitations of only having a couple of terrains, because these two terrain examples don't give any real perfect coastlines. They give a lot of sweeping long beaches, and you get a little bit of this. So in order to get them to work better, you have to tweak them. But I'm going to skip it because coastlines is kind of not really what we're interested in for this exercise. So I'm going to, but we can see if we can tweak that later on. So I'm just going to put that in here, and then we're just going to create a, hang on a second, there we go, create a big one here. There we go. And make quite a bit of it. Okay, now let's take a peek at this. Now I'm kind of curious if you get these kind of weird edges here, so I'm going to see if we can tweak put one in here as well. There we go, and then yeah, that might work. Okay, so here we have the first setup. Now I'm going to add a couple of extra here. I'm going to add another little chain of hills here and see how well that works. Oops. Okay. That will do for now. Okay, far from perfect, but it's something that we can work with, I think. And we have some of these kind of interesting little blobs here and we have a long, straight, boring beach, but I'm not going to be bothered by that at the moment, so to speak. So next is, I'm just going to save this just in case it crashes. And now it's time to take a look at having a manually created river. There are river tools, and I'm going to introduce that a little bit later here, but first we need to create a manual river, because the automatic rivers in World Machine are not that sophisticated. They cannot work for tiny little creeks and stuff, but if you want rivers to go where you need them, so to speak, so if you want the Salinta to go through from here down to here, then we need to manually be able to affect the terrain. So then I'm going to go in and create a layout generator and actually put the layout generator in here. And then rename that one and name it rivers. Okay, so now I'm going to go in here and see. So we have so we have 12 kilometers. This is the elevation. So we have mountains that are 14 kilometers. That's 1/3. So they're about mile high, about 12,000 feet high. So this is kind of higher than the Cairn Hills, but it's going to be, it might work for now, so to speak. So I'm just gonna, this seems to not really work that well. Let's see here. I get a weird spike there. Well, it works here. It gives spikes now and then. So okay, so I'm going to set a path here. So, And just for simplicity, now I'm going to set the elevation to 2 kilometers. And there we go. And I'm going to increase the fallout a little bit here. And now it's time to increase what they call breakup. And that's a natural, we introduce a natural little breakup here. So I'm just going to put in, and this is where I can set intensity. I can set the intensity to about 1 kilometer, not like that, and change the intensity. So if we look at it now and just take a peek here, so what we created now is a kind of a very artificial looking river valley that goes into the that just cuts through the landscape like this. It doesn't look natural at all. So we need to tweak this and work with it. And the first thing is to make it much wider. And we have to go in here and fall off distance and increase the fall off distance to maybe something like that, and then take a peek. And that, now it's starting to look like something. But now you can see that this is not naturally eroded. It only has a fractal pattern that is World Machine uses the same for all along the whole valley, and it's just an artificial bump, so to speak, or an artificial fractal. We need to apply real erosion here. So I need to put in, I'm just going to save first here just in case it crashes. So we go to natural devices and we find an erosion, and then I'm going to put in the erosion afterwards, and I'm going to go in on the setting here, and we're going to erode fairly and have a smooth, and we don't carry a lot of sediment, but I'm going to increase the, I'm going to turn off sediment, because sediment is when it deposits things, and I don't want to increase anything. I just want to cut away. So now we're going to see, but I don't want to affect the whole terrain. So I want to only affect the parts that that I'm using the device here. So now I'm going to go in here and take a peek and invert selection, and I'm going to take all of that and now I affected the whole area that the shape mask that I did affect. So this is kind of a little bit tedious. Now we need to blur this, expand it or blur it. So I'm going to expand it a little bit here. So we make sure that we cover everything here. Expand. There we go. Just a little bit. So, and then we put that and mask the erosion to only affect this area around the river itself. And then we look at this, and now we go in and take a peek. And now I probably need to build this to see if we I don't think it looks that, to be honest, it doesn't look that good. So we have something is not really looking that good. So we need to figure out maybe we need to have some set rock hardness, and I increase some sediment then and see. I need to show advanced here. No uplift, that's the, we can probably increase that one. Okay, now we do a test again and look at the, yep, now we're starting to get what I was hoping for. When we look at look at it now, we can see that we have not this artificial. Now we have a bank here, and you can tell that there is some stuff going in here, but we don't have an absolute flat bottom, but we need to work on that a little bit. First, now we need to actually get a blue river so we can see what we get, where, so we can put a blue little ribbon where the river actually is. So now I'm going to put the shape mask in here and create a new mask so we can actually see where we go in here. Like that. And now I'm going to create some blue color. Please tell me if this is way too boring to look at, because it's kind of tedious 3D programming, but this is what I have to do a lot in order to create 3D terrain. You have to experiment. So now I'm just going to take a blue color, and I'm just going to take a signaling blue here, really clear blue just to begin with, and I'm going to combine that with the current color. So I move that one over, and now we can look, and we have blue all over the place. So I'm going to, we have the plastic blue, but now I'm going to use that mask. There we go. Now it's time to take a look and see what we got here. Okay, it's not too bad. Now we actually have a river that flows through the landscape, and to be honest, it doesn't look that bad. But now I'm going to see if we have, if it's actually, it is fairly flat, but I'm going to take a flat mask and test it, because the river is the same. It doesn't flow downhill. It's flat. It's the same. Okay, thank you, Pete Bog. This is yeah. So normally rivers flow downhill, but this is an artificial. This is a test. So what I did was that I took. Now we go into rivers here again. I took this whole length here. It's all set to 2 kilometers. I can actually go in and set each of these at a different elevation, and that's something we're going to test later. Now I'm just going to test the mask here to see if it works. So that's why we can now test. This whole blue area should be flat. It should all be set at 2 kilometers. And now we can go in and test and make sure that's the case. So we go in and have a selector, and I can select for slope. So I go in here, and again, now I need to select the height output, and I need to mask it using that. And hang on a second. First, don't mask it first. Now we set the slope range from 0 degrees to 0 degrees, just to, and no fall off. And then we go in and see, because often we get nothing here, so we might have to have a little bit of a fall off. Yeah. We can have a fall. This is kind of, yeah. Now we basically get nothing, but we don't worry yet, because there are some issues here. So we have path width. That's the thing. So now we're going to set the path width here to, let's see how a river should be. We take a rather, this is Salintan, so let's go with 800 meters something. And now when we look at here, you can see a faint little white line. I hope you can see that in the video. Hi, LB. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. So now we've actually made the river 800 meters wide. So now we can see if we have the, here we have the slope that is that in. So now we can actually take this and limit just for the heck of it here and see. And we go in here and we look at it. And here we have a set of, now we've limited it too much here. So we need to, if we instead just take the slope and use that as a mask here. So we take the flat area and go in here. And then we run the build again. Yeah, we're onto something here. We have, it's 800 meters, but we have to realize this is 60 miles or 100 kilometers. So we need to be more aggressive and set the river width to, we set it to 2 kilometers just to get something to work with here. And let's set the slope and increase that. We can say that we have 1 degree. We don't need to be surprised 0 degrees because there's some waves and the whole thing can lean just a little bit. So when you don't need to be too precision, meaning this is not rocket science or civil engineering. This is fantasy mapping. So we can be a bit liberal. And now we can start seeing something really cool here. We have a river where we have some islands and we have some side things and whatnot. So we have some weird shapes here, but that's because we have the, hang on a second, this is very raw. So what we need now is to go in here and create some more natural meanders and stuff here. So I'm going to go in here and create some meanders. And work with this here. So there we go. So now I'm going to create a river here. And now I'm using one line with exactly the same settings for the whole range. In order to make it look natural, I will create one little bit with wider river and then kind of narrows and stuff like that, and then combine them. So that's the idea. This is a technical test and not the final thing, so to speak. So we're not recreating the Celinton in all its glory. That's something for a couple of years in the future, when hopefully stuff like this I will actually have learned from this. But now we're starting to get something that is actually way better. So we need to create something like this. And also this will be the river valley. The actual river would flow in this and meander in this too. So that's the other thing. That's what, if you looked at my previous live streams, that's what I painted in Photoshop, was stuff like that. But let's go in here now and just do a quick render. But we're working with the final or very rough resolution here. So let's look at this and make sure we have this is, let's bump up the resolution a bit here. I'm running this on another machine, so it should not affect the stream. So now I'm going to build this a bit, and now you can see the tedious part. You have to wait for the results all the time. That's why you can never have a computer fast enough when you do this. Overdid it. We should probably lower the resolution a little bit for future, for the next render. But I'm going to snack a little bit here, and we can wait for a couple of minutes to see when this is done. Okay. Yeah, so this is take a little while, and this is only 4K. When I render for the final resolution, it's usually 16K, which can take 18 to 24 hours or something, depending on how complicated each area is. I'm going to take a chance to drink some water. Okay, we have not too many. It's the erosion that takes a long time to build because there's a lot of calculations. And especially when you did what I did, you take geological time and you basically accelerate it out into millions of years. Yes, it is kind of possible to lock it. What you do is that use that layout device and you create the coastline. But if you change the fractal settings or something, that will affect the coastline. So you have to make sure that all the fractals, the erosions and all that is locked in. And then you use the layout device and create the coastline, and then as long as you don't change anything, the coastline will be there, so to speak. But there are a lot of caveats in 3D because if you look at it in a different resolution or move your camera, so to speak, just a little bit, then you will have all sorts of issues. But setting that settings being correct, then things should be exact, so to speak. So now we can see a lot more details. So we have river banks and we even have some interesting cool results here in the stuff. And the problem is that in order to see if things are actually correct, it looks a little bit weird, but this looks a bit like there is a that is rounded, but that is a thing with the camera in World Machine. So this is actually a flat riverbed, and if you look at it from various angles, no, I don't think it. Maybe it's not flat. Well, I think it is flat. Sometimes the camera sets you with kind of difficult. So we'll have to go in and do a flat. Yeah, I think it is flat. The problem with World Machine, the camera is a bit primitive. So at times things you have to look at things. Yeah, this is actually flat. Yep. It is flat. So now we have the embryo of a river, and that will we can render it, and the thing is that this is now a 2 kilometer wide river valley. So what I will do in the final thing, let's say this will be Salintan, is that I will render it and this will the mask, and then I will take that mask into Photoshop and then I'll paint in the meandering river, actual river inside the river valley. And that way then you put textures and we add some extra kind of layering and you get some of these terracing and stuff that will then you can render these hills and mountains really realistic, so to speak. This is very rough terrain, but the point with today's exercise is now to see if we can actually export the masks and the tiled thing in this and get it separated and then import it back in and see if it works or not. And I'm just gonna take a quick bite here. So when you work with really large terrains, then you can't render everything in one go. Or if you work with bigger than the computer can handle. I'm sorry. I should. I'm not dying. I'm just I'm just eating things that were too dry and losing my voice here. Oh, and there we go. Now I'm back again. Sorry about that. I should always remind me that I should reschedule this when I'm not hungry. So, okay. So here we have. So the tiling is that normally you can render up to 16K. That's the highest I can do in one go in World Machine. and that means that you can render an image that is 16,384 by 16,384 pixels. And if you want to render bigger, you have to simply split it up into small pieces and let the world machine render each piece separately of the whole terrain. And the problem is that then you get artifacts and things that don't match properly. But you get that even if you have separate renders or if you tile. And I want to see how good the tiling works. The problem is that the older version of World Machine tiling doesn't work at all. You get a lot of errors, crashes, and the thing doesn't really work. It worked in really old versions of World Machine, and then something happened in World Machine 3 and it stopped working. And now in World Machine 4 it seems to work again. So now I want to test it and see if it really works. So now we can actually go in here and see we have a tiled setup here that is at 9. So this terrain is split up into 9 pieces, and I'm not going to use 8,000 per. I'm going to lower this to 1,024 just as a start, just to see if this actually works or not. So now we're going to go in here and we're going to create some of the actual output here. So we want to have an height output. So I'm going to steal the height from the final version here. So we have a height, and then I'm going to create. No, that you don't lock points that way, because the terrain is actually created as a sum of all these factors. So as long as you don't change any of these settings, the output will be the same. But if you go in here, for instance, and change this fractal, or you change the erosion settings, then you change something. But as long as you keep this, then it will work. It will be the same all the time, so to speak. But it's trickier than there is so much math in the background here, so it's almost like chaos. And if you change one little parameter, then that could tilt the whole thing off, so to speak. So I'm going to show that in future videos, and we can see some of the effects when we do the tile render here too. But if you keep all these settings correct and don't change anything, then it will work, so to speak. Oh yeah, lining one tile up to one. Yes, that is the idea. The problem is that since they render each area separately, I'm not so sure. We will see how well it matches. I think that the elevation might work rather well, but I'm also interested to see if the river mask matches up. That is the key, because I need, or rather want, to have the river mask in the next process when I'm doing the final things of this. So, hi Carlos. Welcome. So we'll see here. So now it's so we have the height output. So now I'm going to set. We have a tile test. So I'm going to create a new folder here, and it takes forever on this machine for some reason. It's because the world machine has a tendency of hogging GPU and CPU space, whether you actually render or not. It keeps rendering the preview in the background, which means that all of a sudden it takes forever, and that's because I'm running the latest version of World Machine. It's not that optimized. It's a new version of it that is very, very optimized. So certain things like this, all of a sudden it hogs the whole system. So, but now it's, yeah, so yeah, this is why I was kind of a bit hesitant to do this in a live stream. But I want to show this aspect of my work, so to speak, because I'm spending a lot of time doing this. So I'm going to call this folder export, and in export we're going to call this alt, and I'm just going to save it, and we're not going to do 8-bit raw. We can do 16-bit TIFF is probably a good one, and we're going to output on every build. No, we output on tile build. That's better. And then I'm going to set the name, and we're going to call this one alt 16-bit. so that we know what we're doing. And then we need to, or we should have the colors with us here too. So we're going to save the colors. And then I'll simply take the hijack, so I take the output here, so because this is the device we've been looking at, so if we take the elevation that comes in and the colors, we will get the same as we've looked at here. So now I'm going to, I'm just gonna call this one text or texture, but it's not really, it's not a full texture, but what the heck, it's a simple, it's the color we have right now. So I'm just gonna put that in, and PNG 8 bits is good. Okay, so now we need to have the mask for the, I'm going to do a black and white output or height output, and then we're going to steal the mask for the river. We're going to use that one, and we're going to call it river mask. You have to do this twice, so we have to go in here and we call it river mask. And we probably going to have an elevation. Now we don't need it. We can change it. We can convert it to 8-bit in Photoshop if we need to. So now we have a river mask. I'm just gonna, there we have, so the river mask actually looks like this. So this is the result, and just for the heck of it, we take an ocean mask as well. So I'm going to take a new one here and just do, I think that's the, yeah, that we have, that's the ocean mask. And that means everything that is below 2,000 meters in World Machine. So we're going to take it, call it ocean mask. I wish they had, you could do this in one go, so you can name it and place it. Now I need to name it twice, but it's a bit clunky. And I go in here. Okay, and now I'm going to save it again. And now we're going to take a look at the tiles again. So we have a tiled build that is 4,000. Total dimensions 24,000. That's probably a bit too much. No, it's 3,000. There we go. 6,000. We do a small one, so just to begin with, a very small one. And then we're going to save it, and now we're going to, I'm just gonna open a file browser here and go into the right folder. I'm not even sure where I saved this. Hang on a second. Greyhawk tile test. Okay, of course, Greyhawk tile test. Mapping. Hang on a second. I'm like an idiot at times. I'm worth new. There we go. And tile test and export. There we go. So I can see if the files actually pop up. Okay, so that one, it should participate in tile builds. Blend across tiles and participate in tile builds and participate in tile builds. Okay. So save it, and we're building, and then we're building it, and this should not take more than a couple of minutes because it's very, very low resolution. And this will be very interesting to see how well this works. I was kind of worried in the beginning it took forever, but we're actually getting somewhere, so it's not that bad. Yeah, it will take 2-3 minutes. And we don't need to build that high resolution in order to see if it works or not, because we can figure it out and look at the results. Okay, here we go. And here comes the result. Okay, I got a raw in here too, so but we got what we... Oh, it's a river mask that is raw. Damn, I should have checked that. Okay, wrong format. So hang on a second here. So PNG 8-bit. You learn as long as you live. Looking at all my files here. Let's see. Earth new tile test export. There we go. And let's delete all of them. There we go. We move it away again. Okay. And save and rinse and repeat. That's the thing. If you don't do it right, you have to do it again. You can use raw, but I want to not have to convert it into something else and so on. I want to use kind of file formats for, at least for this purpose. I don't need the ultimate precision. I just want to see if it delivers promising results or not. So now we need to render again for about 2 minutes. And one of the beauties of doing this is multi-step is that now I've rendered the terrain and in one go, and once it's rendered I can import it back into World Machine again and do final tweaks and add things and do texturing and stuff, making sure that the terrain is steady, so to speak, stable. Nothing changes. I can carve out things, and I can kind of add a little bit things like sand dunes, and I can tweak coastlines a bit, add boulders and stuff without changing the terrain. If I move the camera a little bit and render another area, things will be stable. If in this case it's not. If I move the camera a little bit, things go completely haywire. So that's the idea. So to do it. So, okay, so now we have it. So let's fire up Photoshop and take a look at, and hang on a second, we can actually put it back into World Machine is probably better. So well, you can't stop when it's trying to start something. We can just minimize that and go back into World Machine here. Okay, so now I'm saving this. So Now what we can do is we can just re-import, and I'm not going to use a different file. I'm just going to build a new tree here next to it. So I'm just going to because that way we can look at both without having to switch from one to the other. So I'm going to take the generator and then import the files back in again. So I'm going to take this and specify from files and enter tile set, and then I'm going to take open from there to this. There we go. And it is the match to current extent. Hi Blue Phoenix, hi again, welcome back. Yep, so yeah, I'm doing well. I'm just been been snacking on a little things, so I got a dry throat here, but so I'm sorry about that a little while ago. But yeah, so it's World Machine night, so I'm testing out things in World Machine tonight. So tonight is to create a better terrain with a man-made river, so to speak. Man-made meaning it's not using the tools in World Machine, so I've actually created using layout tools and layout stuff, so it's not automatically made in World Machine, it's manually made. And then I want to do a tiled render and export and see and import it back in and see if the tiles match and if the mask and the terrain actually matches. So we've just done the first test render, low resolution, and now imported it back in. So this, now I need to zoom in. So this is the alt. So I'm going to say put back, and this is alt imported, and here we have, yeah, even the basics. Yeah, World Machine is very complicated. Yeah, it is a big step to learn the basics. I've worked with World Machine for 10 years now, and still feel like I'm way past the beginner stage, thankfully. But I still feel like I need to find better ways of doing it. And I'm also trying to do things in World Machine that are kind of pushing the boundaries a bit. It's not really what World Machine is built to create, but so I'm trying to do a little bit more than it could actually do. So here we have, I'm skipping the ocean mask for right now. I'm not really sure, but let's do the texture first, just to see if it works. There we go, and match to current extents, and I'm going to call it text. And now we can actually create and take a look at that result. And texture. And apparently it didn't take the, oh, hang on a second. that was wrong. It's this interpret as RGB. That now we have it. So here we actually have what it rendered. So not too bad, but you see we have these kind of artifacts here, and we have some things that have changed here, but from being and you can actually see artifacts of the tiled render here, but it's not terrible. And so it's not absolute terrible. It's not that bad. I'm actually, what I'm most astonishingly surprised by is that the river, it's perfect. It's almost too perfect. I'm kind of, yeah, I'm impressed. So that was the first stage of the experiment. So it's fairly hopeful, but we have the elevation and we have the texture. Now I'm just going, and then I'm going to take I'm going to do one for the river mask, and then I'm going to feed that data into this and see if I get, because then I can use the same uh, different in data and the same settings. Okay, what's the distinction you're aiming for between natural and artificial rivers? Well, yeah, the artificial river here is a way for me to create really wide rivers and to also get some. And let's go back and look at the original data here, so we don't use the tiles. So the goal with creating these kind of manually created rivers is that I can have rivers of any desired width, and I also get these kind of interesting fractal edges, and I get the rivers that kind of can be, I can have the set the river valley, and I can add a lot more detail like this at the beginning, so to speak. You can do some of that setting you can do automatically, and there is a manual rivers that is creating using built-in tools, but the problem is that it's tedious and I don't like the results that much yet. So just use the layout, is layout shapes, it's called in the latest version. It used to call the layout controller, but now it's called shapes. You can get less scientifically accurate results, but this is fantasy mapping, so we don't need scientifically accurate results. We need cool looking, impressive, inspirational terrain. And for me, this looks better that way. I get more impressive with more cool details and stuff that we can texture and work with. So I'm still in the future. I'm pretty sure that the river tools that are built in World Machine will get better than this. So eventually we can use the automatic or the kind of built-in tools. But right now I'm using a kind of a workaround here. And I probably need to use it for another version or so of World Machine before it gets better. And if I only do one river, it works well. But I want to do maybe hundreds of rivers if I work on a really large area, especially if we have tiled terrain and it works. Yes. Yep. So yeah. So I'm doing part of the Photoshop process in World Machine right away, and I want to see how much I can do in World Machine and instead of in Photoshop, so to speak. So this is more kind of and all more how much I can do in one gulp, in one bite, and how much I can do and get ready right away in World Machine, and how much I need to edit afterwards, and in what order to do things. So it will be much more efficient if I can work on an area that is four times as the size, or 8 times, maybe even 10 or 12 times. That will speed up the process immensely to do large areas, so to speak. And so this is what the goal is. But now let's go in and import the river mask as well. So I'm going to create one of these tiled importers again, and go in here and specify just for the heck of it. And I have river mask. There we go. And we have river mask. There we go. The other one. Come on, please. Oh, it didn't respond right away, so we'll see here. It might take a little bit. Sometimes it takes a few seconds. Again, this is due to World Machine hogging a lot of resources because it's rendering previews all the time. I can probably change that setting somewhere. Here we go. And we match it to current extents. And now we can actually just create a signal color, and I'm just gonna use one of the signal colors. I usually use pink or purple or something that doesn't appear in nature, just as a way to double check. And then I put that over here, and now everything will be pink a bit here. and then I'll simply go in here. And now we can actually double check here and see. And yes, it rendered the river mask, it's rendered in the tile rendered perfectly. So I'm very happy with that. But we have some little artifacts here and there, but to be honest, I don't mind these artifacts much at all. The problem is that this here is one of these, and these coastlines here look kind of crappy. But now we know that at least the data is good enough that we can kind of work on it. So now I'll save again, and I'm actually going to save this as a new version here, just in case I screw things up. This is part of my safety thing, so to speak. So go okay. So now I'm going to simply, I can just copy this whole. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tweak the. Let's see how I do this the best. Well, I copy the whole thing here. That's one of the beauties in World Machine. You can just copy a whole tree. And what I do is that now now we don't have any in data here. So I'm going to take the rendered data here instead. And then now I'm just gonna check this and see. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. So we have a little bit of. Now we're working with the full version of the river again, but I'm just going to check, and we have some little bit of artifacts here, and we can see that we have a straight line there, but to be honest, this works really well. Yeah, this means that we can actually do tiled terrain really well. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up the, and I'm going to delete those because we don't need to export. We should always export the original data and not the ones that we already fiddle around with. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to save again here, and then I'm going to delete all the existing files. There we go. And then I'm going to go in here and look at the tiled setup, and I'm going to increase the bleeding percentage or blending percentage from 12% to 25%. And then I'm going to save, and then we're going to render again and build. Yep, climate zones is definitely something to look into. And the interesting thing is GIS also opens up a lot of interesting possibilities to do this, because since I export out elevation data and basically any other data, flow data, deposition data, whatever, ocean depths and stuff, and I have that data saved on as PNG or raw files or whatever format, and then I can use that in GIS tools like QGIS. And that way we can simply say that everything that is above a certain latitude facing south at a certain elevation has this climate, so to speak. So therefore you can simply program climate zones in GIS tools and then show them on the map, because they are more specialized for that. This is raw terrain generation with fractals and stuff. You can do that in World Machine, but it's much smarter to do it in GIS because then you take this height data and you actually place it in the world. And that means that you can create really cool combinations on map, because you have all sorts of data. You have climate data, you can have population data, settlements, all sorts of cool things. And you can also change the style and stuff. So QGIS and GIS, GIS, that's geographical information systems. So that is basically you take geographical data and then you can process it into cool looking maps. And normally it's done for boring things like crime statistics and population and density and stuff like that. You see them all the time in news and statistics and stuff. But in a fantasy world you can have it things like climate data, you can have where dragons live or whatever, and you can also style it differently. You can have a parchment background and stuff. So it is a really cool thing way of doing this afterwards. So that's something I'm going to dig into next year. Okay, so now we have the elevation data. So now we're going to look here. I'm just going to refresh the rivers here. Yep, thank you, Linda. Yep, and we can validate. There we go. And we go in here. And now we can look at it again. Yeah, it's better. It is better. It's not by much. And we still have, there are some few little artifacts, but I must say that this is, so far, this is very, very promising. It's more promising than I thought. Okay. Yeah, it's... Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, Bluefin, anything like that. So what we'll do it with World Machine is to create all the raw data, meaning the elevation basically, and all the other geographical raw data. So elevation masks for different things and stuff, and then I can create a lot of that stuff afterwards. So I take the raw data from that is saved from World Machine, import it into QGIS, and or another. I will probably mostly use QGIS. I think it's an open source geographical information tool, and then I can put things in there, and I can take the textures from Photoshop and the elevation data from World Machine. I can actually place it in the world exactly where it is. And then I can put things like I can put roads and I can put borders and all the stuff that I've done in Illustrator. But the cool thing with GIS is that it will actually be placed in the world at that specific location. So that opens up a whole world of possibility. Yep, exactly. That Linda, that's perfect. That's exactly right. So you place it in the world, and that means that you can create global maps. You can like make zoomed maps and stuff like that. The other stuff where this can be used is in game engines, where you can basically do the same thing, but you can do it. You can do a little bit less exact, and it's harder to work with on the large scale in game engines, but you can do cool things. You can put buildings, and you can put all sorts of stuff, trees and stuff. So it's kind of, yeah, so GIS systems and game engines are where I want to use this. So that way you can create really, really cool looking maps. So this now, yeah, this looks very promising. So now we're going to do a test and simply boost the resolution to twice as much and see. It will take, instead of 2 minutes, it will probably take maybe 5 or more. So we change the resolution from 124 to 248 pixels and then save. And then I'm going to delete all the files again here and then build. Okay, so there we go. This might take a little while, so we'll see. But it's a little bit tedious, but I'm really, really, really happy with these results. They are way more promising than I thought. And this means that if this works this well, that means that I can work with really large areas. So this was a first kind of test at the small scale. 100 by 100 kilometers, and then since this works really well, then I'll do another test at 500 by 500 kilometers. So this is 60 miles, but instead of doing that, I'll do it. It'll effectively be 300 by 300 miles, and then the test then will not be if the tiles actually match. It will be how difficult will it be to go in and do the fine details before you render when you work on the terrain. So that will be the next test, so to speak, to work on a much larger scale. This is the just the test to see if tiles actually, if it produces the results I want. And this is very promising. Very, very promising. A lot of times when you do stuff like this, you get to work and it doesn't produce results this quick. But I was kind of I was happy. I thought this would work rather well. I did one tile test before, but it didn't have a river mask, and it was not as it used only one terrain. But now I'm used two different types of terrain that I mixed and matched, and I have a river mask, and it's I got both of them almost perfect. They were good enough, so to speak. So then I can actually go in afterwards and correct them in the next step when I import them back in again, and kind of have a patch up terrain that I can kind of work on. We can even do some of the correction in Photoshop too. So it's not possible. It's not impossible. So yeah. Yeah, Blue Nix, this could be really, really tedious. So hopefully I didn't overdo it when it comes to so yeah. Oh yeah, it is interesting. This is kind of the cutting edge of fantasy mapping in 3D, when you can actually create the world in 3D, so to speak. So there will be much better tools in the future and faster computers and all that, so to speak. So we'll see. It's kind of, yeah, and now you see when you boost up the resolution, it started. I thought it would not take that long, but we'll see. It usually takes a long time in the beginning, and then as soon as it gets past one of the erosion devices, it goes really quick at the end. So we'll see. And you can this is where multi the CPU. I have 8 cores in this one, but I want to have a 32 or 24 core or something like that, or hopefully in the future, sometime in the future, maybe even 64 cores, because then you and lots of RAM. Then it's 128 gigabytes of RAM in this one. I want to have twice as much, and 16, 24 or 38 cores or something like that, or 32 cores or something. If I have that many CPU cores, then I can blast through this way, way faster. So now we're starting to see some builds here. So we're starting to get somewhere. This is if I will do a really large build, I will simply do it overnight, or just run it in the background somewhere, and it will just sit and crank out. So that's why I will have one of my old computers simply sitting doing this 24/7, and then I work on another one. But I work on my render computer here when I'm doing the streaming, so I can do the render on one computer and the streaming on another one. Otherwise, I will overload it. No, not really. Well, you kind of when you save something, especially when you do. I do that when I work on texturing and stuff. Then you save it as a TIFF or PNG or JPEG from Photoshop, and then you can just update it in World Machine. So yes, but that's when you go into the latest stages, and that's something that I think will be time to show in the next map live stream, when we actually work on the final version with building heights and do the final editing of my Shieldlands map. So instead of raw test, we will actually work on the final image, where we can actually see things, basically the final render, so to speak, in World Machine. And that's where you basically, yeah, you work straight from Photoshop. So you save something in Photoshop, you import it into World Machine, and it's not real time, but it's as close to real time as you get. So that's when you have these kind of bumps in the terrain that looks like trees, and we will have buildings and stuff. So and that's also masks that you have to work with there. So this is one end. This is the kind of the very basic setup, and the other next live stream will be the other end, when you actually see the final result of all this work. And a lot of it has been in between, but thanks to, or due to me not having the really fast computers, I've kind of tried to stay clear of World Machine for my mapping live stream, and now you guys can see why, because this is like watching paint dry. But I'll worst case scenario, if this drags on, then we can go in Photoshop and do some editing there instead. And it's starting to get somewhere, so yeah, it will not take that many more minutes, but a couple of more minutes and we're done. We'll see what we've done in time here. So we have, yeah, about 40 minutes more to what I'm planned, but yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, it's working on, and you can set the number of tiles it works on. You can set now. I probably not tweaked it. You can tweak this better, so you can. It's probably firing on all cylinders, meaning all cores, and you can set it to. That was the other way. Now I just kept the standard settings. Okay, thank you, Bluenix, and good night, and I hope to catch you on the next one. So thank you for coming. Yeah, so this is standard tile settings, and if you've had a lot of issues with mismatching tiles and stuff, you can actually set World Machine to only render one tile at a time. And that way will apparently, at least back in the day when I did earlier, in the earlier versions of it, you got better result if you rendered one at a time and not in parallel. And that would be my, but I don't want to have to resort to that. I want to run World Machine as effective as possible. So yeah, that will be kind of cool, but no, you don't. You can technically import them because they are written as files, and you can import them in. But the problem is that they don't come out right, and the actual writing of the files is a separate process. So even if they look like they're rendered in here, they might not be written to the disk until afterwards, because that's one separate process that runs in the background, and you can't really see it here. You can open up into the file thingy, but so far I can see that a number of them are built, but there's no folders in here yet. So it's kind of that they're or no files in the folder yet. So yeah, I wish that, but it's like most computers. It's easy to get them start or something, but it's much harder for them to end it, so to speak, or to abort it. But now we're almost done here, and it's interesting. It says 41.42%, but but you built almost all the tiles, so that percentage done kind of doesn't reflect the whole thing really. So it's actually, we've done probably about 80 or 90% now. Oh, then now comes the writing process afterwards. So apparently the new version, okay, here we go, blending and exporting. So, but those things usually go fairly quickly. It depends on how much. We set 25% blending, and we can set even more blending, and it will fuzzy out the edges. So we can look at things here and see when it's done. So maybe a minute or so. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's go back in here and go in here and validate. Yeah, it's validated, and judging from that, it doesn't look good at all. It looks terrible. Look at this. It looks bad. This was the kind of result I was kind of saying that, oh, this looks bad. And this is what happens sometimes. Yeah, in a way I'm kind of, but I can tell that this it doesn't look that bad when I look at the files. So I'm going to go in here and refresh from files. Uh, There we go. Sometimes you get these kind of weird things, and it's the cache because we loaded the same file set before. World Machine has this idea of preloading things, so now we actually look at it in double the resolution. And I'm going to build to that device, and it should not take that long to build. Maybe I overdid it. Let's see here. There we go. No, here we go. Now we have 4,000, and to be honest, it is perfect. Apart from these little artifacts that I don't mind them at all. That type of artifact is kind of cool. You get a little bit of lakes and stuff. That's easy to fix afterwards. So yeah, yeah, this is very, very good. I don't see any hard artifacts, and the river works really, really well. Yeah, and the coastlines are damn perfect. So I must say that overall this was a huge success. After just clearing out that the pre-cached data, then it worked. And now we got the detail here, and we even have a riverbank. We just need to add some strata or some hang on a second here, some filter. We need to add some terracing and stuff, but there's a lot of erosion and details and stuff we can add. This is not a terrain test, so to speak, but we blended two terrains, and we put a river straight through, and it actually worked really well even when you tiled. There's a few, when you look at it large like this, you get a little bit of, we get these when there's no data out here, then you get these kind of weird things like that, but that's marginal, because all you need to do is fill it with a little bit of data. You can do that afterwards if need be, and otherwise there's no artifacts whatsoever. And this is because now you can add in rivers that are automatic rivers, so to speak, meaning all the little creeks and stuff. And that's something to add afterwards. And then I can do the terrain and the major rivers at the first stage, export it all out in detail, import it back in, and then do the fine little creeks and lakes and stuff that fills this. And then render, because then I can render that in bit by bit. Yes, peat bog, yep, and let's do that for a little bit here. So let's save here, and now I'm going to save this as a new version, because we tested the tiles, so I'm just gonna do a version 5 here and say rivers, just add that in so I remember, because now what we can do in this one, we can just delete all this, because not that one, but not the guide map, we have it already. So now I'm just going to delete this and concentrate. So now we have this back again. Okay, so now we can actually add rivers that are generated automatically, and there is a device for that. It's called Create Water, and reach character river create water. There we go. So we basically put that in here. Hi DM Malarkey, welcome. So yeah, so tonight is World Machine, and we're working with tiles and setting up, and we just succeeded, mission accomplished, so to speak. So today's test. So now I'm going to show a little bit. We can actually, it was a good question from Pete Bog, and you can actually have World Machine create lakes and rivers automatically, so to speak. So here we can have the setting. We can go in and I'm just going to get some water. We have, that's the color of, don't need two of them, so we have that one. So we just gonna add some, because we create here, we have lake mask and we got a tributary mask. So I'm just gonna go in and combine that with the other watercolors. So now I'm just gonna separate it here. So there we go. So I'm going to take add, and now I'm going to add the tributary mask to that. And as you saw, now if we look into it here, we have rivers. We have lots of little rivers, and it looks kind of crazy. So I don't know the settings. I'm just, oh, hang on a second, we're going to cancel that right away because it is too high resolution, because that takes forever. So we're just gonna take a look at really low resolution first, so we don't have to spend all evening. And now I'm just going to render it and low resolution, so it doesn't take that long, because rivers can take a little bit to build here. So now we can take a look at it, and here we go. So here is the maximum potential of rivers, and now you can see basically every little nook and cranny here is yeah, YouTube hates that. So if you don't run it in native resolution, it will look like crap. So now we need to go in here and basically see if we can drain to, yeah, so we need to go show advanced here. So let's see here, scalar, and there we go. So we do it like that, and minimum water depth, we're going to keep it like, we keep it like that. And map borders and existing water, yeah, that's good. And now we go in, maybe I overdid it the other way around. Yeah, here we go. So now you have a setting. Here we have more kind of where realistically rivers will flow. So here you have World Machine added automatic made rivers where they should be, so to speak. And you can actually go in, because you get some of them here that are too close, they are parallel. So what you do is that you generate this as a mask, a separate mask, and then in Photoshop you can simply just paint away the ones that you don't want. Here, for instance, you have one here and another one there, so I will keep one and delete the other one. And so you get a lot of these kind of little double ones and stuff. So you can kind of add them and remove them as needed, so to speak. But the cool thing is that this can be done on the tiled data that we did from the first one. And one of the weird things that happens in World Machine, now I'm going to show it now. I'm going to save this here, and now I'm going to create a new extent. I'm just going to call it new scene, and then we're going to go in and just move the camera just a little bit, and you will see that kind of screws things up. So we're going to go in here and new scene, and then I'm just gonna drag that one, so control and drag it just a little bit like this, and then we go in and look at it, and all of a sudden we have things have shifted. If you look at the coastline here, it looks completely different from what it was before. So if you change it a little bit, a lot of the details are the same, but especially details like coastlines and stuff, and all of a sudden it just boom, and it's different. So it kind of, it doesn't work at all well. So I'm just going to go in here and switch back to working, and here we are. So the good thing is, when this happens when you work straight from the fractals, when it's being generated. But if you work with the tiled rendered data, that means that the elevation will not change. You can move the camera around a little bit and work on extra details and stuff, and the base elevation will not change because you have already rendered it. It doesn't recalculate it, it just imports it and sets it. So that's one of the other benefits of having work on tiled render, and do it first and then import it. So what you will do is that you will add these rivers and stuff in the second go. That was the first stage. Let's look at lakes and stuff too. And in order for that, we need to have work with, because lakes, they not only there, they also create a water surface. So now we need to so let's go in first and add the here we go. I just need to go in and add the lake mask in here, and that's that. And we need to add, and now when we look at it, we can see that we've added a bunch of lakes here that kind of look really cool here. So now we have lakes, and we have actually turned a lot of the river system here into a lake system, which for a major river is kind of cool. But what I need to do once I render this is that I might not want to have all these as lake. I might want to have them as peat bogs, or I want to have them as plain, might be an old lake that is grown up. But the thing is that these are just blue painted terrain because it's not flat. It's actually you can see that if you go in here, you can see, if we zoom in here now, we can't zoom here, maybe. No, we can't zoom. But if you look closer, you can see that this is not flat inside here. So we actually need to go in and create the surface level in here. And for that, we need to be, I'm going to save this again here. We need to do some more kind of let's see if I can find that device. Now we need to no, it's not the transform. Is it the converter? Composite type, there we go. And we need to unpack composite type, and we need to core water, there we go. And then we have water system. We take the water data out there, depth, water surface, and now we take the water surface and we take a combiner of this data, and we take the take this and go in here. We add, and then we take max, so we say that the highest data, and now we go in and we look at it from the top, and now we can see that these are actually flat lakes now. So we've added the elevation level to exactly where we want them to be. But the other cool thing is now we can actually go in and change the put some real texture. Instead of just having plastic blue, we can actually go in and take depth out of it. So what we do is that we take the depth and we create here we go, clamp. So now we're going to create the texture for the stuff. So we take the depth data here, and we look at the depth data, and then we normalize that input. And now you can see, if we look at it here, we actually have the depth data normalized for all the lakes here. So now we can just take this data and then we can convert that into color information. So we can actually take we have a colorizer for rivers, or for the ocean. So we take the same color data here and feed it in, and we look at it, and oh, that was the wrong one. So we can skip that one. We take that color. That's the one. Drag it in here. Yeah, DM Malarkey. This is very it's a kind of this is a 3D terrain making tool. So it's very advanced and it's kind of yeah it's kind of really cool. And it's but the thing is that this has a really steep it's difficult to learn, so to speak. So it takes a while, but you can make some amazing results. So I'm glad, and this was kind of a test of it. There will be more. I will work on the more final stuff. So yeah, yep. So this I've talked about this quite often, and on the various map show and all the other shows we've had with Jay and on the Lord Gazumba channel. So this is the kind of the terrain tool that I use to create the basic terrain, and then there's Photoshop and all that stuff. And in the end, there will be Illustrator or GIS or something to put the final results together. World Machine. I've been using World Machine almost 10 years now. So I'm starting to feel I've reached the professional level, so to speak. I'm not a master, but I'm starting to get to understand the more intricate works of it, so to speak. But the problem is that I'm not really using it for what it's meant to do. I'm tweaking it in a direction where it probably was not really meant to go to begin with. So most what this normally is done for is to create terrain for video games of various kinds. And what I need to do is in some ways way more complicated than a video game. I want to create whole countries, large, really large areas, way more at way higher resolution than video games do. So in that way it's harder. But on the other hand, I'm also more keen on the it should look accurate terrain rather than just cool, so to speak. So my use case is different than the video game thing. Okay, so here we have the colorizer for that. So let's go in and add that to so we need a combiner again here. So I combine the texture in here. We create that on there. And now we just need to do the lake mask. And now we can take a look at the result. And here we have some lake textures too. So here we have a result that is starting to be interesting, so to speak. And this is just raw texture, so this needs to be tweaked in Photoshop and stuff afterwards. But if you have the masks and this as a raw texture, it's starting to get really interesting, and you're starting to have some really cool stuff to work with, so to speak. And you can kind of mix and match a lot of this. And it always requires a Photoshop run or two afterwards, but it makes it very useful. And what we can do is that we can kind of test and work. Now we can actually do a render test and then use the same data and base it. First we have, this is what we have if we do we can render this and then use that. But I work that I'm not worried about because I've used that before, so that bit I'm not worried about. But this is basically the goal. But this is the procedure to create the little rivers, and these are the little creeks, so to speak, that comes out, and you can kind of create the. And now you should also be able to have the rivers and lakes they create. Yeah, they can carve. You can have them carve out little they carve into the terrain too. You can set that as much as they want to, but normally I don't do that much. You can kind of, but you can set that if you want them to dig in, and how deep you want them to dig in. But I just assume that these are small little creeks that are just a few feet across, so they don't leave that much imprint. You just want to have them there to see, to have them work. But one of the problems with these little creeks is that they have a tendency to look artificial. They look okay here where you have a lot of data, but if you look over here, for instance, as soon as they start going over flat terrain, they start forming these super straight lines, and they don't work there. So that's when I don't want them to carve out. That's why I don't set them to carve straight into World Machine. So I simply I export out the masks first, and then I can go in and edit them in Photoshop. So I keep all these that look natural. I weed out some of these that are kind of duplicates. I kind of remove them in Photoshop, and some of these I add in meander curves and kind of tweak them and make them look better in Photoshop at the end. That way you can create all the features and the terrain that looks really, really good. And then I use this data, and I can just tweak it because I use the height map as a mask in Photoshop, and that way you can create super realistic looking textures because you have the real data, so to speak, and that you can use it both in Photoshop and then eventually in GIS. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with this. That means that from in the future now I can actually go in and create work on really large areas in one go at full resolution. And I have 30 kilometers of, so I have effectively 10 kilometers. So this is set at 32 kilometers elevation. That's the vertical room. But since I work with the terrain in 3 times the size, so effectively you have 10 kilometers to play with. So yeah, so this is good. So any more questions and stuff? This was the mission accomplished, and I'm really happy. This was 2 hours of testing that turned out to work really well. Really, really well. I'm so happy with that the terrain. So let's save this and go back in and look at the other one here. We have this one doesn't have all the rivers, but we have the tiled data, and now I need to go in here and reset cache, and we need to validate the test again. So yeah. So that's the problem you get occasionally. You get these kind of weird things, but it's not the data that is wrong. We saw that before. So yeah, I just need to specify the export. So we have Alt, go in there again, and take the new data. Yeah, this is one of the problems with World Machine. You get these kind of that it reset the data because we haven't saved the data again, so there is no change to it. Worked before, so it should work again. So I probably need to reset so okay, so skip that one. We don't. Yeah, we saved that one. So obviously, let's skip saving it then and go back into river test here again. Thank you, DM Malarkey. Thank you so much. Yeah, these are, I will try and show the different aspects of what I do, both from this kind of very basic tech development side, and then show the more end side. So next time we're going to go in and look at the more final stuff, so to speak, so we can actually see what the final results will look like. So this is the very basic setup and work with the how it works. And one of the weird thing is that there are some issues like that. So if you use the same file name over again, it gets screwy in data. But that's a data issue, an issue in World Machine. So that works. We can kind of tweak that. But I'm really happy with the results. The tile render works really well. So I can go in and tweak it. It works well enough. So this yep, so it's very, very promising. So now I'll try and do a large tile test to see if I can actually work on an area that is huge and get it to effectively create something in it. But that's too tedious to live stream, I think, because there's a lot of waiting time in between. So I'm not going to sit and force anyone to sit and watch that. So thank you, Carlos. Yeah, World Machine is something to it's easy to be. It's very frustrating, but it's also very easy to be falling in love with it. Because you literally create your own world, so you feel like God when you sit here and work on your stuff. And you can kind of and especially when you start introducing things like your texturing and stuff, you can kind of, oh, I can see an adventure there, and I can see a castle up on the hilltop or whatever it is. So you start getting all this kind of, it's literal world building, and it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun, but it's also very tedious to do. Setups like this, you can easily spend a day or two, but once you have it set up, you can kind of expand and do one area after another, and you can do a lot of things. And this is 60 by 60, so it's 360. Yeah, hang on a second. It's 3,600 miles. Yep, square miles in. Hang on a second. Now I need to make sure I'm. Yep, 3,600 square miles. Yep, in one go. And I hope to do 10 times that, so almost do 500,000 square miles in one go. That's the end goal with this. When I have a faster computer, and hopefully I can render it even on my existing computer, because when you can do tile render and you can work overnight. So the next step in this process will be to see if I can actually work effectively on an area that is that big. So that will be the test, so to speak, to see if that works. But at least at least I know the actual render process works, and the tiled render works, and you get the river mask to come out. And here is enough detail to make a real cool terrain, and then you add textures and trees and all sorts of stuff on this. So yeah. It's basically first, to get my new computer will probably be somewhere next spring or something. First, the crazy prices on GPUs and stuff have to come down a bit, and then I need to save up a little bit more, because the budget is probably somewhere in around $6,000-7,000 for it. So I don't have that money laying around. So I need to save up a little bit and hope that my patrons can keep keep sending me a little bit of money every month for another 6-8 months. Then I hopefully can have enough that I can invest in a new cool computer, so I can do this a lot faster and work on a lot of stuff in one go, so to speak. But it's important to hone the skills and have the setup ready, so when I have a new computer I can actually sit down and work. So that's the goal. But I'm so glad that some of you came in, and I hope you found this interesting, so to speak. It's basic world building and using World Machine and some of these kind of settings, and have to work our way through and export out the masks and the elevation data and then import it back in to see. So I think, yeah, so mission accomplished. I'm so glad that you guys were with me on this and helped out. So I think I'm going to end it there for this session. And since Jay with Lord Gasumba channel have vacation next week, so I might do 2 live streams, mapping live streams, since there's not much else going on. So I might do one Monday again. So I'll keep a lookout on social media and stuff. So, but I hope that I can do one on Monday. I'm not 100% sure. I have to look into the calendar and stuff, but I hope I can do it. Do one on Monday again. So definitely at least one next week, hopefully two. Oh, thank you, DM Malarkey. It's so much fun, and thanks to you guys cheering me on and keep me doing this. So it's a lot of fun to do this, and it's very rewarding when you have a Greyhawk community that is very appreciative of it. So thank you so much for the show. I'm going to put into the pause here, and then I'm going to end it. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and like I said, there will be at least one, hopefully two mapping live streams next week, and then we will move in from this kind of basics to having look at final things. So we will look at the next one will be the final touch-ups and final render in World Machine, so and Photoshop, so we can actually look at things like building heights. We can tweak where trees are, and then look at the final stuff. So, oh, thank you, Brad. Thank you. So okay, so take care and have a great weekend, everyone, and I'll see you and talk to you next week. Bye for now.